Welcome to the deep dive. Thanks for joining us. Today we're taking a close look at a real icon in the guitar world, that little yellow box, the Boss SD1 Super Overdrive pedal. Our mission, using the info you've given us, is to unpack its whole story, the history, the tech inside it, its huge cultural impact, and well, why it's still around and so loved. We'll get into what makes it special, how it helped create legendary guitar tones, how it's always been affordable, and its surprising range across different music styles.
Yeah, it really is fascinating how just one piece of gear looks pretty simple, really,
Mhm.
can end up having such a massive lasting effect on music and, the whole world of guitar effects. It says a lot about getting the fundamentals right in the design.
Definitely. So where did it actually start? How did this legend kick off? The Boss SD1 Super Overdrive. It landed in 1981, made by Boss Corporation, which, as you probably know, is part of Roland in Japan. But it wasn't entirely from scratch, was it? It was more like an upgrade.
Exactly. It was designed as the next step from their really groundbreaking pedal, the Boss OD1 Overdrive. That one came out back in '77.
And the OD1 had a bit of an issue, right? Something missing.
The key thing, yeah, the limitation was no tone control. Which sounds minor maybe, but think about it. You could get this great overdrive sound, but you couldn't easily tweak it. You couldn't make it brighter or darker to match your guitar or your amp or even just the room.
Ah, okay.
So the SD1 fixed that directly. It added that tone knob, and right away, boom, guitarists had way more control, way more flexibility. That was a huge step up for shaping your actual sound.
Right, that makes sense. Such a simple addition, but it clearly made a world of difference. And from the start, the SD1 wasn't just about the sound. People loved it because, well, it was built like a tank, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, classic Boss construction, tough as nails.
And versatile, too. It worked for so many different sounds, and maybe most importantly, it wasn't expensive.
Absolutely. That combination, the
Yeah.
tone, the build, the versatility, and that price point, it just nailed it.
And that's how it became such a staple for those classic rock and blues sounds we still hear everywhere. Okay, so that's the origin. But what about the sound? What's the secret sauce inside? Let's get into the circuit design. What makes the SD1 sound like, well, an SD1?
Okay, so the absolute core of its classic sound, the thing people always talk about, is its asymmetrical diode clipping.
Asymmetrical clipping.
Right.
What does that actually mean in simple terms?
Well, imagine a sound wave, kind of like a smooth up and down line. Symmetrical clipping, which some other pedals use, chops off the top and bottom peaks evenly.
Mm-hmm.
It can sound a bit, maybe harsher or more compressed sometimes.
Okay.
Asymmetrical clipping, though, clips it unevenly.
Yeah.
It cuts more off one side of the wave than the other.
Mm.
And the result, it creates this smoother, warmer sound. It feels more natural, more like a tube amp starting to break up. It also reacts really well to how hard or soft you play.
So it's more dynamic.
Exactly. It feels more responsive. It's a key difference if you compare it to, say, the Ibanez Tube Screamer, the TS-808, that uses symmetrical clipping, so it just has a different flavor, different character.
Interesting. So that asymmetrical thing gives it that sort of organic amp-like feel. What else is going on in there? There's an op amp, right?
Yep. At its heart, it's an IC-based design, uses an operational amplifier. Very often you'll find a JRC 458D chip inside or something similar, a dual op-amp IC.
Ah, the JRC 45588D. That chip's kind of famous in pedal circles, isn't it?
It really is. It got this legendary status, especially tied to those classic 80s overdrive sounds. A lot of sought-after pedals used it.
Gotcha. And the controls are famously simple.
Deceptively simple, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, just three knobs, but they do a lot. You've got level, that's just your overall output volume. You can use it to boost your signal, push your amp, or just set it so the volume stays the same when the pedal's on or off. Unity gain.
Right. Standard stuff.
Then there's tone. And this is the crucial one that the OD1 didn't have. It gives you a really wide sweep. You can go from dark, smooth, almost bluesy sounds all the way up to quite bright, cutting lead tones. It's surprisingly effective for just one knob.
And finally, drive.
Drive, yeah. That dials in the amount of gain, the distortion. You can set it low for just a hint of grit, almost like a clean boost, or crank it up for a pretty decent, moderately heavy crunch sound. It doesn't get into super high gain territory, but it covers a lot of ground.
And it's got the standard Boss buffered bypass, too.
Yep, the classic Boss buffered bypass.
Yep.
Known for being reliable, keeps your signal strong even with long cable runs. And power is straightforward standard Boss 9-volt DC adapter, the PSA type, or you can just pop a 9-volt battery in there.
It really is amazing, though, when you think about it. A piece of tech from 1981 still being made, still popular. How do they keep it so consistent over, what, 40-plus years? Surely things changed a bit.
That's a great point. And yes, there have been subtle changes. But the key is Boss's commitment to that core sound. The basic circuit hasn't really fundamentally changed. Now, there are differences people talk about, especially the early models made in Japan, the MIJ ones, from 81 up into the early 90s.
Ah, yes, the legendary MIJ pedals.
Right. Collectors really prize those. They're often perceived as having a slightly warmer tone, maybe a bit more mojo. They often use that JRC 4558 op amp we mentioned and other specific Japanese components. You'll hear people talk about black label MIJ or silver label MIJ pedals. Those definitely fetch higher prices on the used market. There's a certain mystique around them.
But eventually they stopped making them in Japan.
Yeah, production shifted. Sometime in the late 1980s, maybe early 90s, depending on the model, Boss moved most of its pedal manufacturing over to Taiwan. So you get MIT pedals.
And how do those compare? Is the magic gone?
Well, that's the interesting thing. For a while, yeah, some collectors definitely preferred the MIJ ones. There was this idea they were superior. But honestly, over time, the consensus really shifted. The Taiwanese-made pedals are now widely seen as just as good. They're incredibly consistent, totally reliable, and sound excellent.
So basically the same core sound.
Pretty much. There might have been minor tweaks to components over the decades, maybe some different op amps used occasionally. And eventually they introduced more modern manufacturing like SMT surface mount technology.
Right, smaller components.
Exactly. But through all that, Boss really managed to keep the essential SD1 character intact. That's why it's still a bestseller. You plug in a new one today, you're getting that sound.
And besides the standard yellow ones, they've done some special versions too, haven't they?
They have. There was the 40th anniversary SD1 back in 2021. It was a cool limited run, had this sleek black finish with gold lettering, looked sharp.
Yeah, I remember seeing those.
And then there's a really significant one, the SD1W, the Wazacraft version.
Ah, Wazacraft line. Premium stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They came out in 2014. It's like the deluxe SD1. It has a little switch giving you two modes. Standard mode is designed to be a perfect replica of the classic original SD1 sound.
Okay.
But then custom mode tweaks the circuit, gives you a bit more gain range, maybe improved dynamics, a slightly different, often described as more refined or smoother tonal character.
Yeah.
So it gives players options within that same basic footprint.
So the original sound plus something a bit extra makes sense. And it's that sound, that blend of drive and clarity that must have caught the attention of some pretty big names over the years. Who are some of the iconic players associated with the SD1?
Oh, absolutely. This is where you really see its reach. It's been used by countless guitarists, way more than you might think, across so many styles. It's not just a rock pedal. For instance, Eddie Van Halen. He famously used an SD1 quite a bit during the whole Van Hagar era, the 80s and early 90s.
Yeah.
He'd use it to push the front end of his Marshalls, get that smooth, saturated lead tone.
Right, that makes sense for his sound then.
Zakk Wylde, too. Especially early in his career, an SD1 was a key part of his rig. Again, usually hitting a Marshall hard for that really aggressive, pinch harmonic-filled metal tone.
Wow, okay. Van Halen and Zakk Wylde, quite different sounds from the same box.
Exactly. And then you have someone like Steve Vai. He used one occasionally in the studio and live back in the mid to late 80s, probably for adding just the right amount of grit or push.
Even Jimmy Page?
Reportedly, yeah. There are reports he experimented with them live in the 80s. And Prince. Prince was a huge Boss pedal user, and the SD1 was definitely in his setup at times, studio and stage. You can imagine him using it for those articulate, funky rhythm parts with just a bit of bite.
That's amazing, Prince.
Gary Moore is another big one. He used the SD1 extensively for those incredible soaring blues rock tones he was known for in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, I can hear that.
And even more recently, someone like Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age. He's known for having a pretty diverse rig, and the SD1 has popped up in his setups over the years, too.
It's incredible. The list just goes on. It really shows how versatile it is. It's not just defining the sound, it's enhancing what the player and their amp are already doing.
Precisely. It works with your gear.
And beyond those huge names, you just know there were thousands upon thousands of other guitarists, session players, weekend warriors, beginners who made the SD1 a cornerstone of their sound. Why? Because it worked, it was reliable, and crucially, you could actually afford it.
That affordability factor cannot be overstated. It made a great overdrive accessible to everyone.
But the SD1 story isn't just about Boss making them and players using them. It also kicked off this whole other world, right? The world of mods and DIY. It seems like this pedal, because it was simple and everywhere, became this platform for tinkering.
Absolutely. Its influence on the wider pedal landscape is massive, partly because of that modding culture. that asymmetrical clipping circuit we talked about. Once people figured out how it worked, it got copied, adapted, and replicated by tons of boutique pedal builders, and in countless DIY circuits and clones.
So it sort of set a template.
In many ways, yes. It became a foundational overdrive circuit that people learned from and built upon. And because the circuit was relatively straightforward and the components were easy to get, it became this, perfect entry point for guitarists wanting to understand electronics. It wasn't some mysterious black box anymore. It actually helped create and fuel the online pedal modding community.
That's really cool. It democratized pedal building in a way. And you're right, it has to be one of the most modded pedals ever. If you search online for pedal mods, the SD1 is always right there at the top.
Always. And some specific mods became really famous. Robert Keeley, for example. His SD1 mods were legendary for adding clarity, maybe tightening up the bass, making the gain smoother.
Keeley mods, right. I've heard of those.
Analog Man, Mike Piera, also offered well-regarded mods. Things like upgrading diodes, swapping the op-amp chip, tweaking the tone for better frequency response.
And then there's the whole DIY scene.
Oh yeah, loads of popular DIY mods. One of the most common is the 808 mod. That basically changes parts in the SD1 circuit to make it sound more like a Ibanez Tube Screamer TS-808.
Turning the boss into an Ibanez, essentially.
Kind of, yeah. Or at least getting it closer in character.
Yeah.
People also love swapping the clipping diodes, putting in LEDs, or different types of silicon, or even germanium diodes. Each type changes how the signal distorts the feel and the texture of the overdrive.
So you can really customize the clipping.
Exactly. And changing capacitors or resistors in the tone stack the EQ part of the circuit to shift the frequency response. Make it brighter, darker, more mid-focused, less mid-focused. Tons of possibilities.
It really did become this foundational learning tool, didn't it? People could take this simple, affordable pedal and really learn how overdrive circuits work by tweaking it. All those online forums, guides, kits. It sparked a huge amount of creativity and understanding.
It absolutely did. A gateway pedal in more ways than one.
So let's bring it up to today. Where does the SD1 stand now in 2025?
Remarkably, it's still one of Boss's absolute bestsellers. Continuously in production, readily available everywhere.
Still that familiar yellow box on the shelves.
Still there, and still incredibly affordable. That retail price is just exceptionally low for the quality and the history you're getting. It makes it a no-brainer for beginners putting together this first pedal board, but pros still use it too.
Why do you think pros stick with it when there's so many boutique options now?
Consistency and reliability, I think. You know exactly what you're going to get with an SD1. It sounds great, it works every time, it can take a beating, it just does its job. Across pretty much any genre you can think of, it's respected.
And for those who want something a bit more refined, there's that Waza Craft version now too.
Exactly. The SD1W offers that premium take, with the standard mode for the classic sound and the custom mode for extra flexibility. So Boss is catering to both ends of the market.
So summing up its legacy, it's pretty huge.
It really is.
Yeah.
After more than 4 decades, it's still seen as this benchmark overdrive. It's universally appreciated for being so versatile, having that classic sound, and it's just unmatched history in the effects world.
Yeah.
It set a standard.
Yeah, you could really argue the Boss SD1 Super Overdrive is one of the foundational pedals, full stop. Since '81, it really defined what many players think an overdrive should sound like, what it should do. That warm, tube-like feel, the way it responds to your playing, the clarity it maintains even when driven, that useful tone control.
All of that.
Its incredible popularity, the way it can be adapted and modded, that really influential circuit.
Wow.
It all guarantees it's going to remain a cornerstone for a long time to come.
A true classic. What an amazing run for that little yellow pedal. Just incredible. It really is. And maybe a final thought for you listening. As you think about the SD1 story, just consider how often really big innovations, things with lasting impact, come from something quite simple, like identifying just one small limitation in something that already exists, like the OD1 needing a tone control and fixing it. That simple fix led to decades of influence, shaped the sound of music, and sparked this whole vibrant community around it.
That's a fantastic point. Innovation doesn't always have to be revolutionary. Sometimes evolution is just as powerful. Well, thank you for walking us through that history, and thank you all for tuning in to this deep dive. We hope you'll join us again next time.